what's going on YouTube? This is Acid Root. So I'm going to review the fifth album by rap duo Outkast. Basically, this project is called Speakerboxxx, and it came out in the it actually came out in the fall of 2003. I was going to say late summer, but it came out in the fall of 2003. So the thing about this particular review is just the fact I'm not going to review the Love Below just yet. I don't really feel like reviewing like a double album at this particular stage, but I am going to review the big boy side of things as far as that pitch gun goes. Now, this is a damn near classic here. This album was a big deal back in 2003 as a double album set. It continues to be one of the highest selling rap albums of all time. Basically went like 11 tons platinum, which is pretty blistering. There's not a ton of rap albums that go diamond within those pitches, but I would probably have to say, in a lot of senses, at least in critic appeal and more casual type consumption, it seems like the Andre 3000 album, The Love Below, tends to get more accolades. It had more singles. The Andre 3000 album had 3 singles, which was basically Hey Ya, Roses, and then Prototype as far as those pitches can happen. But the Big Boy album only had 2 singles, one of which did hit #1 on the charts, but the other one was kind of not necessarily a flub type single, but just didn't catch on with the same dexterity that it probably needed to. If I look after it, just to be able to say that Andre 3000 had he was really in like having the Midas touch type era around that particular time. He had a particular sweet spot back in like the fall of 2003, just the early 2000s in general. It seemed like every year of the 2000s, Andre 3000 had like a quality sing-songy kind of hook or hit song just to be able to get between like The Whole World in late 2001, 2002, So Fresh, So Clean off of Stankonia, and then also like Miss Jackson off of Stankonia 2000, 2001, 2002, 2003/2004 was Hey Ya, and 2004 was Roses. So it's just within the pitch of just having a bunch of those. Like I was saying, I will eventually get to Love Below. I might review another Outkast album in there before I get to that one, like AT Aliens, but I would definitely say it's going to happen within the pitches. But I look after it, I do see the classic appeal of this. This is kind of underappreciated. I would feel like Big Boy tends to not get as much accolades as Andre 3000, which is disappointing because he has a pretty like strengthy and overall this wiry kind of album put out as far as the pitch that he's done. I feel like the Son of Chico Dusty album from 2010 was pretty excellent, and then his 2012 album was pretty good. Vicious Lies and Dangerous Rumors, some pitches like that. So he's had a series of albums. This one back in the early 2000s is basically like a Southern Fried type album that has surprising commercial aspects about it. It's a pretty good pitch. It's unfortunate that this album did not catch on casually or commercially apart from like the #1 single, The Way You Move, but it definitely has other gems on there. It's on the verge of being a classic, maybe not a full-blown classic, just quite, but definitely pretty damn well close to it, I'd have to say, just within the pitch. Definitely way better of an album than it is, and I'd have to say just within the pitch behind it. So, but yeah, I would definitely not sleep on this particular album. It has a lot of good type appeals about it. Just would have to say, just the overall aspect, and I would feel like, this is an album in terms of like commercial rap. It definitely, like, it has Jay-Z, Killer Mike, Ludacris on here, some folks like that, so there is some good appeals. Just the fact that, basically first solo album, he gets a Jay-Z feature, which Jay-Z, I would have to suppose, is pretty expensive, but just with an aspect. I mean, this is kind of what the Outkast album probably would have been like had they done a sequel to Stankonia like they were supposed to. Big Boy has the more traditional Outkast type fare just without Andre 3000. I mean, he's on at least one song on here. He does have some extra helping kind of vocals on Ghetto Music, but for the most part, he's not on really any of these particular songs, and Big Boy's only on one song on Andre 3000's album, which is Roses, but it's just a good pitch. So yeah, this is like a vanilla kind of album. This, in terms of Southern hip hop, I'd say apart from Ludacris's Chicken and Beer, this is probably one of the more vanilla and just overall biting kind of commercial albums to kind of fuck with out of 2003 from like a Southern hip hop artist, that I'd say, because Mystical wasn't around this year, and like Master P was kind of fading out of the spotlight. Just folks like that, I'd have to say UGK didn't really have anything because Pimp C was in prison, so it's just within the pitch behind it. But yeah, some good stuff. So yeah, just to say about this album, there were only 2 singles on the Big Boy side of things. Basically, Wikipedia says that Ghetto Music was actually released as a single in the summer of 2003, but I'm going to say it's the second single just because it actually got the music video released for it in the fall of 2004, so it's just kind of the pitch that it may have been like a promo single in the summer of 2003, but after like The Way You Move phased out in like the spring of 2004, it was just kind of the pitch as far as saying that they basically Outkast pumped out a few more singles after Roses in like the spring and summer of 2004, and those were Prototype and Ghetto Music, so I'll just talk about it that way. But basically, like a song that was a pretty big deal throughout the 2003-2004 season was The Way You Move. This is an excellent type pitch here. This is a song that hit #1, has a hella good sleepy brown hook, just an overall jazzy type appeal. It's like a smoking, kind of hella swagged out, crisp. The song is like a smoking, kind of hella swagged out, crisp nightclub charm, I'd have to say about this one. Just an easy hit and deserving #1, I'd have to say. Just a good song for that sort of appeal. Just simple type one. This has all the makings of like a #1 song here, just within the aspect. This butter smooth type song just has that suave type appeal, just an overall aspect. That's just kind of the concept about it. I feel like Big Boy was kind of like the smooth cat compared to more of like the eclecticness to Andre 3000. That's obviously why they had such a good combination, just because they were dynamic within the sense. But the unfortunate thing is just the fact that Big Boy was not really able to follow up this particular song, which, not to say that he wasn't able to in terms of the quality songs on here, but just in terms of the pitch and just the affable kind of just catchy charm of this particular song. It just has a really effectual chorus. It's a real feel-good type song that this had. It's a real feel-good type song that has a good emphaticness about it that really works great for like the holiday season. This one is cooler out. It was released in the summer as a single, but I feel like just between like mid-late October to about like the first opening weeks of March, I'd have to say, about the first opening weeks of March, I'd have to say this works as a pretty emphatic type song. But yeah, so the second single was Ghetto Music. This is another nice one. This is a little bit more turned up, but it just didn't catch on as well in like the radio charts, but it is an excellent song. Definitely a very blistering. Andre 3000 has some backup vocals on this particular song. I can see folks originally thinking that this was going to be an Outkast song, but the unfortunate thing about this song is just the fact that Big Boy only drops one verse on here, but it is some excellent type fare. It's like a super jiving kind of electro nightclub blitz of a song to kind of get here. Just a hype kind of rave music and exhilarating kind of crazy night to kind of have. So this one's probably one of the more fast-paced type songs from Outkast. Definitely one of the more fast-paced songs from the Outkast collective, more so than most of the stuff that they've done. It is kind of unfortunate that Andre 3000 was not on this particular song. Would have been an excellent type fare. This would have been just like an Outkast song more so than like a solo song, but just within the pitch, I do think Andre 3000 contributed to this. It's very warped and jarbled type vocals, but it works pretty damn well within the pitch behind it. Just some excellent type fare. Just real pretty good early 2000s rave type music. Just a good concept with some vanilla rap music, but just nails it in like the kind of just blistering type speed of it. So that happens to be the pitch. But yeah, that's the basic wrap up. So to say, I mean, it's just kind of, I feel like the promotion of this album is underwhelming for this being one of like the highest selling rap albums of all time. I mean, basically the concept, I know that the concept behind why this album is the highest, I mean, Andre 3000 is what took the cake as far as the reason why this album is so emphatic. This is the fact that him being in like the sweet spot of like the appeal and the overall this blossom type personality and the affability that he had in like that particular time. I feel like this is kind of like the supplement to that particular boisterous type of appeal. But then I question how good the Love Below actually was. I don't know because I haven't listened to it as much full blown, but I would have to say I do at least know the singles off that project. I need to listen to Prototype more, but I just would have to say I think the quality of this album's sales is more based on like the 3 or 4 singles. I think at least I would have to say Roses, Way You Move, and Hey Y'all were like the main reasons why this album was bought that many times. But I look after the appeal that there is more to this particular album that's just kind of not as appreciated. It's just kind of the concept. It's kind of like when you think of like albums from like rock back in like the 80s and 90s that would have like 1 or 2 hit singles, but they would still go 8 and 10 and 15 times platinum. It's just the same pitch. That's kind of what happened with this album. But I do see the big boy side. I do see the big boy side of things, at least at this particular stage. I am going to listen to Love Below later, but I see the big boy side of things up to this point is seen as, I can see this being one of the highest rap selling albums of all time. This is in the pitch because the classic appeal is there. But yeah, so this album's going to get a 9.5 out of 10 for me. I'm just going to go ahead and say out of basically there's 19 songs in here, but minus like the 6 skits, that narrows it down to 13. So basically out of 13 songs in here, really there's 11 that I recommend. So there's only 2 songs that I don't, and those 2 songs would just be The Rooster and War. Only 2 songs I don't recommend would just be The Rooster and War. Basically, to talk about those, I feel like the amalgamation behind Rooster was just kind of an awkward type one. There's a lot of brassy type moments on here. Songs like Bow Tie, The Way You Move, The Rooster, even songs like Last Call. It's just within the pitch of kind of having some of that relative, almost marching band kind of sports game type appeal. But The Rooster is the one that just didn't nail it nearly as well within that particular kind of fair, I'd have to say. And then War I just didn't really like. I didn't really appreciate as much, like the beat switch up. I like the production, the kind of jarbled production at the beginning of that song kind of felt like another kind of brooding type one, but just later towards the end of the song it just didn't have as much. It didn't have as much jump off the page as I say. I think it was just kind of like a kind of dream wake up, some pitches like that, but it just didn't nail it as well. But yeah, this album still gets a 9.5 out of 10, so we'll go ahead and talk about some of these. So this basically is like a vanilla rap album, I'd have to say, just within the pitch behind it, but I do like a lot of this. It has commercial grabs on here, maybe not as full-blown as much as Andre 3000 is able to do it, but I do think some of these concepts are some good rumination type songs like Knowing, Flip Flop Rock, like Unhappy, some of these type of ones really nail that relative appeal. Just like some Rainy Day kind of makeshift and pitches like that, kind of similar to like The Whole World, but just not as sing-songy, but definitely some vanilla productions. I would say Flip Flop Brock is a nice one. This has Killer Mike and Jay-Z on there, which is pretty excellent pair. It's like a classic kind of malaise and dreary kind of Rainy Day star-studded collabo. I'd have to say about this one. Real blitzing type one. It's kind of half makeshift, kind of half afterthought of a song kind of get here. There's some vanilla type fare, just really bluesy type day, just in the pitch behind it, but really nails it extremely well. Just a good personable type one that hits the nail on the head pretty well, I'd have to say. Another song like that would be Unhappy. This is kind of a commercial grab here. I like this particular appeal of this one. It's like a Rainy Day kind of makeshift and reflection to kind of get within that tone. Just some good 2000s kind of commercial commute, I'd feel like. It's kind of blue collar type fare, just some blue collar kind of humdrum, I'd have to say about this one. So yeah, it has a lot of affability within the similarities between like The Whole World, but once again, not as sing-songy. But they do have some attempts. I feel like Sleepy Brown helps out with some of these. He's not on that particular song, but just kind of has the appeal, just like the standard backing of like, I forget the name, like the label that has like Goody Mob and all those folks on. I forget I think it's called like the Dungeon House label, something like that. I forget, Dungeon Family, something like that, but it just has that relative appeal. So it has some good backings. It's commercial within the aspect behind it, but it just, I think if these songs that had Andre 3000 on there, they definitely probably would have been. I think they probably would have gotten to like the 6th or 7th single had this just been an Outkast album. They just had been on more songs than maybe Slags than the ones, but it's just within the pitch that, yeah, it definitely has that commercial bite about it, just without like the actual casual kind of radio, something that would have been on a radio. And just has that commercial kind of appeal without the charting aspects about it, I have to say, with some good concepts. But there are some club type songs on here, songs like Tomb of the Boom and Last Call are some nice ones for that. Tomb of the Boom is a real nice one that says Big Gip and Ludacris on there, which I want to say Big Gip was kind of a Nelly affiliate. I'm not really as full-blown sure, something like that. And Concrete, don't really know him as full blown, but this is like a sluggish and kind of scuzzy, red eyes kind of club glitz to kind of get here. Definitely nice one for that. Just feels like a jarred kind of just hella hammered type one, just hella burnt by that. I mean, with smokage, great smokage while kind of being social. I'd have to say about this one, it's just pretty jivey songs. Perfect song to hear Ludacris on. He fits this song real well. Him back in his braids days when he was cracking jokes, pitches like that, Chicken and Beer and Red Light District days. Just some good pitches for that. Just real nice kind of, just real nice scuzzing, kind of just hazed out, kind of one, wired up kind of one as far as those pitches kind of go. Bust is a real nice one. This is another club type bop to kind of get here. It has Killer Mike on here. I'm glad that Killer Mike was on this album a number of times. Pretty good pitch for that. It's like a jazzy kind of night venue times kind of getting like a chopped and screwed kind of dreary of a sense, I'd have to say. It's an overall kind of blurry ass night. I'd have to suppose about this one. Just a great album cut and some good slag to kind of get here. So I like the chopped and screwed kind of big boy verse that's on this particular song. Him and Killer Mike, Big Boy and Killer Mike make a pretty good combination, so it's just a good pitch for that, I'd have to say. Last Call is another good club bopper to kind of get here. It's like an after moments kind of night venue glare about this particular song. Just a dazzled kind of head ringing just from being hella turned up. I'd have to say just good tone for that. Just slurred out some good pitches. This is an easy kind of continued songs, like an easy kind of continued club noise. I'd have to say about this one. It's just an overall dope hit. So this has some Little John background vocals on here. The Eastside Boys and them help out with this. And there's some other folks like Slim Calhoun and Mello just within the pitch. Just some extra type fare. Just what I'd say is just a kind of crunk type song, but not quite as full blown. It's kind of more Outkast, just the 2003 version of something off of Stankonia. It just feels like one of those type songs that just has like that kind of thumping type appeal just within it, just in a club type sense. But I do wish the Little John emphasis on this song was maybe a little bit larger, maybe just 1 or 2 steps larger than it actually was. But for the appeal, it's like a minor type crunk hit. But this is just very commercial. It's just interesting that Big Boy was as commercial as he was, because I do think in the early 2000s, Outkast was like seen as one of the actual faces of rap just within the commercial aspects, at least in Southern hip hop. I mean, apart from Ludacris, I'd say there weren't a ton of Southern hip hop artists that had that commercial appeal. So it's just kind of a concept that this album kind of was a big deal around those particular times. So it did have all the big names on here as far as those pitches kind of happen. So it's just kind of some commercial club noise, basically like what Stankonia would have been like in 2003. But Church is a nice one as well. This is an in-between type song. I really like the appeal of this. The song's like a glaring and kind of stone, kind of extra thoughts to kind of get here. I'd had to say it's a Tupac-like kind of atonement about this particular one, contemplating going to church, some of those type fairs, just kind of having a more ruffled kind of day, just some Tupac-like atonement in a more vanilla rap sense. I'd have to say kind of similar to like Tupac's Life Goes On, just more churchy, I'd say. It's not as much churchy like this, you know, worship and that sort of pitch, but just within the tone and just like the aspect of just contemplating, just having some extra thought that I'd say, but it is a catchy song, I suppose. So I do like some of this atonement just about this one, just a real nice one to kind of get with Big Boy, just honing and harnessing Tupac within those relative type appeals, and it does have a vanilla type production on there, so it's just kind of a pasted kind of one. One of the darkest songs on this particular project is Knowing. Definitely appreciated this one. It's like a brooding and kind of contemplative, kind of reflective a song to kind of get here. The song is dark and a good pairing with like Unhappy, I would feel like, but just not as radio friendly. The song is dark and a good pairing with Unhappy, I'd have to say, but just not as radio friendly, I'd have to suppose about this one. That's just kind of some good appeal. Just do like some of these contemplative type moments on here. Very similar to like Reset, very similar to Reset and Flip Flop Rock and Unhappy, I'd have to say about some of these type ones. Just within the aspect, it's interesting kind of get some of this rumination on here, because I do feel like Big Boy had some extra thoughts on this particular album, and it's interesting about that just because this is a Big Boy solo album, so this is kind of the appeal, getting some of these extra type moments that kind of have contemplation about it. It's some actual songwriting within the pitch. This album is not completely packed to the gills. This album is not completely packed to the gills with like turn-up songs and nightclub songs like Way You Move and Tomb of the Boom and some of those type ones. There's actually some extra rumination on here that works pretty well within the pitch behind it. So it does have some songwriting, good tones for that. And another song that's kind of like that is Reset. This has Cujo and CeeLo on there, which is pretty good pitch. It's good to get some CeeLo cameos as far as this pitch going to happen. It's like a steamy and kind of tropic-like kind of rumination kind of get here, just some after hours kind of extra thoughts to kind of have, and this goes well with Unhappy and just kind of some good stuff for like a ruffled day, I'd say. So it's just some good appeal. It's another nice one, just a little bit more hotel type music, just the aspect of this maybe the aspect of maybe more summary type stuff in mind, just within the appeal behind it. Steamy kind of day, just within the tone, maybe like a hot June kind of day, hot April kind of day, some of those type fairs, just being able to say just more hotel bound or just more places where there's going to be more lush kind of green leaves out and about it, I'd say, just in the tone behind it. But this continued rumination. Then a real excellent type song on here. I don't know if I talked about this one, but this is definitely one of the best songs in the album in terms of like the overall gloss and just feel good, just bouncy kind of like balmy type appeal is Bow Tie. This is like a more traditional but hella catchy kind of jazzy and brass like tuxedo bouncer of a song to kind of get here. Definite aspect. It's real feel good type song. It really has the appeal. This is a glissy type one. Kind of a nightclub song, but not normally like the gnarled kind of nightclub kind of crunk typeness. It's not quite as snarly and just overall vicious as I say, but just has some overall. This really feels like Bow Tie feels more of like a progressive kind of feel good rap club song as far as those pitches going to happen. Just kind of within that appeal. Pretty much like a groomed kind of night out, and you kind of get it's very similar to like The Way You Move, maybe not as full blown catchy, but definitely could probably be like a pretty good promo single. This pitch like that. It's another nice one that has Sleepy Brown and Jazzy Faye on here. This overall like the appeal behind this, very marching band like. There's some overall good aspects of just like some step out in a more ballroom type sense. It's kind of the appeal. This is like a good, relatively pretty rock solid 1-2 punch with The Way You Move. I do feel like Way You Move is just the overall headlining highlight off this particular album. It's definitely that same sort of appeal. That's just kind of a good album cut that maybe you get some drinks in your system, just overall have a nice time and just kind of have some ballroom fun as far as those pitches kind of go. Just a more groom type one to kind of get. So yeah, but with that, I think I've talked about every song off this particular album that I recommend. I just had to say here, so it's just within the pitch. So this album gets a 9.5 out of 10. The social score, that's kind of tricky. I think I'll give the social score like an 8.75. I like the tone behind this particular product. When I look after it, does have some big names on here: Ludacris, Lil Jon, Jay-Z, Killer Mike, some of those type folks, CeeLo, even Sleepy Brown has some good hooks on here. I do like the overall aspects about it, but I do have to say that unfortunately, like the biggest two songs, the biggest actual song is The Way You Move. Obviously, it did hit #1, but it just does not have anything close to something that can couple this particular product in terms of extra kind of hits on here. For the most part, you probably would be seeing more in the hardcore being more of like a fan of this particular album, is more seen in like the hardcore type territory, just because it doesn't have terribly much to back it up casual wise. I'd say no. I think Ghetto Music is an excellent song, but this song really did not chart that terrifically in terms of like any sort of chart apart from like the R&B and rap charts, and even then it was at like 93 out of 100 or something like that in terms of like those charts, which is distant from like the Billboard 100, not full blown distant, but it's just kind of the appeal behind it. So this was not, this album just did great, but it was just more known for like the Andre 3000 featured singles for the most part, apart from like the one Big Boy song. But I just look after it. Still an excellent album. Still appreciate the pitch behind it. There are some casual bops on here. A lot of rumination just within the tones and contemplation. Songs like Knowing, Flip Flop Rock, Reset, Church, Unhappy, some of those type ones. And if you're absolutely looking for more nightclub songs with turn up like The Way You Move, Ghetto Music, and Bow Tie, I'd have to say it's full blown. It's not tons of these in particular, but I would say at least Tomb of the Boom and Last Call at least has some follow-up type moments, but for the most part, it's just kind of a more personable type record, not in full-blown kind of senses, but just not as much. I mean, I look after it, just kind of has a little bit more groomed and just kind of more sophisticated. It has a little bit suaver and more sophisticated type step out as far as those pitches kind of happen. It's just a little bit more composed within the sense. I mean, it definitely advances the sound. It definitely advances the sound on Stankonia as far as those pitches kind of happen, but it just has more composition about it, more so as full-blown comparatively. But I look after it as definitely a real vintage and classic type album to kind of get here for the most part. Just a virtual classic, just with the appeal of what it does. As I say, it's just kind of the concept that I look after. It does have some turn-up moments on here, but it does have just as much contemplation and more rumination just to be able to get just more of this kind of a blue collar type rap album within a relative early 2000s kind of sense for like some southern hip hop. I'd say so that's a pretty good tone for that. But I still would have to say I do think probably this album could have used at least one or two more bops in terms of like the tone of something like The Way You Move, and that's just kind of the aspect that once again, like I was saying, the actual casual impact of this album is not that high, because for the most part, if you are fucking with the big boy side of things, it just does not really have any other hits on it for the most full-blown part, apart from Ghetto Music, which just didn't chart that heavily at all, I'd say. So it's just kind of within the tone. It's just a little bit more of like a trial to kind of enforce that with casual wise, just more for folks that don't as much full-blown know about Big Boy, especially nowadays. I'd say was just within the tone. So in terms of the future, like Big Boy has not put out an album since like the mid-2010s. I think he dropped an album in like 2015 as far as those pitches gonna happen. He has at least 3 more albums that I'd say I'm definitely gonna get to the Chico Dusty album, then the 2012 album as far as those pitches gonna happen, just full-blown aspects just in general. I'd say there's some more of these, but not really as full-blown sure as to what Big Boy's been up to in recent times. He's kind of faded into the background more nowadays. That I'd say was just kind of the concept. I'm fairly certain that there's not going to be another Outkast album just within those fairs, but this is a very impactful one. Just some great commercial rap just within a vanilla type sense. Good rumination songs on here, some good relatively morose type songs that hit the nail on the head pretty excellently. Great budget, some nightclub songs within a relative sense, just more tuxedo type music pitches like that, bow tie type fare. It says that extra kind of gloss and sophisticated kind of nightlife that just has some jazziness that just works pretty well. Nice southern grace kind of get here.